Good morning, beautiful community. I hope you're all well. I just wanted to jump on today to talk about something that I've experienced twice, no less twice, which is actually quite unbelievable. And I really believe that it's linked to hormones, whether anybody suggests this to you or not. I'm here to tell you from my experience, I definitely think that frozen shoulders are due, not always, but are due to the change in hormones. I mean, obviously you can get it through injury, but it is much more common in women than it is in men. And also that age range as well. You know, I remember when I was quite young, maybe, I don't know, 15 or something, and I remember my mum at the time talking about a frozen shoulder and how it was one of the most painful things that she'd ever experienced. And all the way back then, they did quite a hands-on, well, quite a full-on, not so much hands-on. It was an operation where she was knocked out and her whole arm was turned, and the rotator cuff, the whole, and the ball and socket was turned in order to kind of like free it up. You know, and all these years later, you know, my mum's 70 now, and she said that she still can't kind of like sleep with her arm underneath the pillow. You know, she can do the vast majority of other things, but she just said it's never been right. So my first experience was probably when I started to kind of hit perimenopause, and I think mine would have been a little bit earlier maybe than most, but at the time I didn't realise, which many people don't, that it was actually perimenopause. I didn't realise that I was estrogen dominant for a really long time. I had fibroids and endometriosis. So nearly always when somebody has endometriosis or fibroids, they normally are estrogen dominant and they're not actually ever really tested. Quite often I found out after my hysterectomy. I had a subtotal hysterectomy, which means that I kept my ovaries, but kind of everything else, and I kept my cervix, everything else is gone. But anyway, we're not talking about hysterectomies. I'll come back to that another day. But yes, so way before, I mean, I was obviously having lots of gynecological problems, but the shoulder, you know, and it just literally, I started to notice when I was working out that the range, you know, was slowly changing. And I'm quite a body aware person, you know, I'd been teaching yoga for like 12 years at that time, and had been practicing for like 25 or whatever. So I pretty in tune with my body and started to notice these subtle changes that then aren't subtle. You know, I have always been very open in my shoulders, and you can't even, you know, like if you think of doing that behind you, like taking opposite elbows, couldn't do that, you know. And I always had really open shoulders. I could clasp my hands back behind me and move my arms right up. That plane of movement is a big indication if you can't like reach your, you know, opposite elbows. And another one was when I put my arms out to the side, I couldn't even, you know, you can't raise it above shoulder level this way or that way or back behind you. So it's, you know, some people will say, oh, I've got a frozen shoulder, and it often isn't, because in all honesty, it took about 2 years, 18 months before I had my pretty much, you know, I still wouldn't say, I'd say I've got 85% back. And the first one was 3 years ago, and the second one was around the time of my hysterectomy. I remember it slowly starting to show itself, and I remember my PT at the time saying, what's going on with that other arm, because he was obviously very aware of me nursing the other one and not having that full range of movement. And then obviously that came back after about, yeah, as I say, 18 months to 2 years. You know, I couldn't do yoga for ages because yoga is so arm heavy that I just felt, that's where I discovered actually mat-based Pilates. And I always, you know, was not fond of Pilates at all because I was very much into dynamic forms of yoga. But the one, my lovely lady Heather here in Brighton, kind of changed my opinion of it, because hers were very dynamic, beautifully choreographed. So I loved that kind of dynamic flow that was different from other mat-based, slower, you know, kind of Pilates that I didn't enjoy. But yeah, it really helped completely rehab my shoulder. But I'd say, what, you know, it comes in 3 stages. You'll have the freezing when it's not particularly painful. It's just, you start to notice that the movement is very restricted, and then it starts to get really painful as it moves into the frozen stage. And I mean, I remember my daughter just literally lightly banging my shoulder, and literally it would take my breath away, and tears would be streaming down my face. So it is, you know, you can't sleep, you can't lie on that side. Even if you try lie on the other side, the shoulder would fall forward, and that pulling on the shoulder, yeah, it's really not a fun thing. I mean, I would see my lovely acupuncture lady that would help. The second time round, when it happened on the other side, I had some cryotherapy, which is great for reducing inflammation. But what I learned out of both of them is you just can't rush it. It really gives you that time of patience, paring things right back, you know, not stopping moving, definitely not. You know, I got one of those, you know, like the stretchy bands, and that kind of like outward rotation, and, you know, trying with a pole behind my back, but that only comes after the pain goes. And I was having like electric shock like pain. I remember at one point I had to go on like nerve medication for a short space of time because it was so intense. So yeah, I would say if you're having anything like that, please go and get it checked out. You know, I don't recommend things like steroid injections because I've had it for many different joint issues, and I really don't feel that it works. But that is a total personal thing, you know, and you do what's right for you. But I think, you know, resting it, you know, taking things that are anti-inflammatory, an anti-inflammatory diet, and slow little movements, making sure that you are keeping it moving, but only not to the point where it's excruciating. And a lot of the time it is just resting it. So yeah, I thought that this was quite an important one because I know that lots of women get it and they don't correlate it with anything. And I really feel that it's due to the drop of the estrogen and the hormones within our body that causes these hormonal changes. And then yeah, this starts up, and yeah, it's not fun. I met a woman the other day and she had it in both arms at the same time. I was like, oh my lord, you know, I've had it in both and it's horrendous. So to have both at the same time is really not fun. So yeah, if you've got any questions you want to ask me with regards to this or anything else menopause related or yoga related or meditation related, then please drop me a message. But I hope you give yourself some time today just to pause, just to notice how you feel, just checking in, even if you're just sitting for a minute or two. Just be good to yourself today. Love you all. Have a great day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you.